This is one of Cluny the Scourge's Rome Total War online battles, and I am playing as the Seleucids. I've taken 7 units of archers and 4 units of phalanx pikemen. I've put them all on loose formation and deployed them in 2 wings interspersed with one another, so that the pikemen, when set to phalanx, will protect the archers. The purpose of the 2 wings is to try to create an enveloping effect against the enemy, to distract and confuse him as to which target he should attack. I've also taken 2 scythed chariots, deployed in the centre, resplendent in their spiked satanic chic like the Cenobites from the Hellraiser movies, and 7 Greek cavalry upgraded deployed on my left, who I took out of fear that my opponent, which is Numidia, would take many Numidian skirmishing javelin cavalry who I would have to chase down, and Greek cavalry have the fast moving trait. My opponent, decimated 22, playing as Numidia, has taken 7 units of archers, 4 legionaries, 3 Numidian camel riders, 2 Numidian cavalry, and 1 unit of war elephants. Wisely held in the rear for the time being to keep them out of reach of my archers so that I can't use flame arrows to cause them to run amok while they're still in the midst of their own army. As the battle opened, my opponent blundered by sending 1 unit of his Numidian cavalry to the left, well within reach of my archers, and made a futile attempt to strike at them. They were quickly driven back by my Greek cavalry, and by their distress at the number of enemies they were having to face. He made a similar move over on the right, bringing his other unit of Numidian cavalry within reach of my archers, but this time he wisely held them back, occupying the attention of my missile troops, while he brought his own, scattered in loose formation, within reach of mine to begin the archery duel. Thus my missile troops were otherwise occupied, while he was concentrating his fire against me, giving him the upper hand. I foolishly did not realize his intentions quickly enough, and allowed him to whittle away my numbers over on the right, claiming as a reward only the unit of Numidian cavalry, defeated, which neutralizes the importance of that fast-moving Greek cavalry, and by now it becomes clear that I should have taken cataphracts instead. So the archery duel is underway. My left wing still isn't within range, so I rush them forward to contribute. I soon decide that in a straight-up missile duel, however, I'm probably going to lose, which means my opponent will be able to force me to come to him, my infantry greatly damaged, before they even come within pillar range of his legionaries. So I decide that something radical has to be done, and I deploy my Greek cavalry on the left. This certainly does shake the situation up, though it doesn't all go in my favour. Decimator may only have 3 units of camels, but camels gain a combat bonus when fighting against horse cavalry, because horses can't stand the smell of camels. Plus they gain an additional combat bonus in deserts, like this desert map, the Syrian Flats, combined with the frightened by nearby elephants effect. In that situation there, one of my Greek cavalry units has already been routed. The imperative of avoiding contact with the elephants, who would destroy these cavalry very quickly indeed, means that they've become split up. I sent this half to attack the archers, loosing the fateful lightning of my terrible swift sword, trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. I'm trying to regain the edge in archery strength I've lost in the missile duel itself. His camel cavalry intercept the first contingent, and then the second once they finally arrive after their elephant-induced detour, and because my forces have been divided, they are destroyed in detail by numerically inferior camels. While the enemy is thus occupied, I decide it's time to deploy my Cenobites, who delight in the pain of others. It's their enemy's flesh they're interested in, not their bargaining skills, and they will tear their souls apart. Especially the cavalry, which is why my opponent reconsidered meeting them with his camels, as you saw there, since they would have been eviscerated like the victims of Jack the Ripper. He uses his archers on fire arrow mode, which is correct tactics of course, since this will speed the rate at which the chariots run amok and pass out of my control. I'm wreaking yet more havoc on his archers at any rate, and you will see at the end of the battle that this becomes absolutely crucial, though we don't realize that at this point. The response of my opponent's infantry, that is to say no response, is entirely correct for dealing with chariots. Make sure the infantry are off guard mode, then simply allow the chariots to work their way into your ranks while you stand still. Realizing that with the mess I'm making of his bowmen with my cavalry, he isn't going to win the missile duel, my opponent decides to send his elephants and one of his camel units against my left. Naturally, I immediately set all of those bowmen who are within range to incendiary mode and start targeting the elephants. Decimator uses his camel riders to disrupt that effort, routing one of my units of archers. However, they become entangled on the defensive phalanx deployed to protect them. A phalanx on loose formation with only 3 ranks isn't going to rout them immediately, but they are in fact doomed if they don't disengage, and they don't. Decimator sent his elephants on a wide circle to strike against my other phalanx from the rear, so I simply turned them about face. The phalanxes used in these formations of mine are essentially a bluff. He could have simply smashed his way straight through the front and saved himself the trouble of exposing his elephants to fire arrows for so long. As it is, they are made to run amok and pass out of my opponent's control. Now, back over in the centre here, you can see the death of my remaining Greek cavalry. I don't exactly help matters by pouring fire arrows down on my own screaming men, but I just can't help it in my hunger for roast camel meat. I love the smell of burning camel in the morning. That baked carpet hair smell smells like victory. Anyway, here you see that I blundered when I sent forward my phalanxes from the right-hand wing. I ordered them to attack out of phalanx formation, so they drew their swords and put down their sarissas, took casualties unnecessarily. Ultimately though, I did recover my formation and fixed these legionaries in place, ready for a hammer and anvil strike with my scythed chariots, brought over from the right, as you can see here. Scythed chariots are deadly killing machines, plus they inspire fear in the enemy, so they're even more effective at a hammer and anvil than conventional cavalry. And now between them they make a mess of this isolated 2nd Numidian legionary unit, which means that I've destroyed half of my opponent's infantry. As you can see, those elephants rampaging over from the left are now seriously pissed off, and they came perilously close to squashing my scythed chariots there. Now I have to turn my attention to the rest of my opponent's infantry, these Numidian legionaries who get plenty of opportunity to unleash their pillar javelins, as you can see. Hoping to repeat what I've just achieved, I send my scythed chariots on a wide looping arc around in the hope of striking them in the rear once I've fixed them in place with my sarissas. And finally the horses go mad with fright and they run amok. Scythed chariots will generally do this eventually, just as elephants will. Which means the battlefield has now become a perilous place indeed. The pikemen say to the legionaries, "Elephants to the left of us, chariots to the right. Here I am stuck in the middle with you." And indeed those chariots now transform us all into strawberry preserve in the most fair and democratic way. No discrimination on this battlefield. When it comes to the crunch, however, it is the Numidian legionaries who prove themselves the more sturdy and reliable. They stand, while my men turn to flee, including my general. I do still have my 2 pikeman units from the left wing of my formation, however. This one came so close to death by trampling that the survivors of the battle probably founded some kind of elephant-worshipping cult afterward. At any rate, the army's camp-following laundry women will have a great deal of work to do when they hand their uniforms in to be washed. The threat of those elephants meant that these 2 pikeman units became separated. They suffered the morale effects of being isolated, coupled with the panic-inducing effect of fire arrows. They fled the field in emulation of their snivelling general before they even came into proper combat. Throughout, as units of my Greek cavalry regrouped, I sent them back in. Generally they did very little good and were broken once again. You will now see the only exception when a charge from some Greek cavalry, combined with my pikemen, created a localized numerical superiority that swiftly routed this unit of Numidian legionaries. And now, rather absurdly, the battle comes down to a simple contest between our remaining archers, shooting at each other with fire arrows at almost point-blank range. We each send the pitiful fragments of our remaining melee forces in to try to disrupt the enemy's archers as we do so, I with my pikes, then he with his legionaries, but in each case they are panicked by the numbers of archers standing right in front of them and break very quickly. And so the suicidal efforts of my Greek cavalry earlier on in the battle, attacking his archers, have proved to be fruitful. I simply had a greater number of bowmen than he at the end. One other thing I did was to send one of my archer units in to attack in hand-to-hand combat. To win this battle, I think my opponent needed to begin it by attacking one or the other of my wings with all of his legionaries, elephants and cavalry at once.